Hello and welcome to the Module 10 Video Technology Part 2 for LIS 886. Before we venture into another week of wonderful geeky techdom, please take a moment to adjust the sound settings on your computer. If you have any problems viewing the video, please contact me as soon as possible. Before you watch this week's commentary, please read pages 209 to 232 in the Safety text. Also, please read the article posted on Canvas called How to Evaluate New Technologies for RIM Impact by Sophia Empel. Directions on where to find everything you need for this week is found on Canvas. This week, I am going to give you the lecture that I like to call Things That I Wish I Knew Before I Became a RIM Program Manager. This is going to be the sequel, as I'll call it, to our technology unit that we went over last week. In that, I'm going to take a lot of the concepts that we built on, learning the difference between bits and bytes and all the different file types, and show you how to actually find an electronic records management system that may work for your organization. So we're going to go through all the ins and outs of things that you really should know as a program manager in dealing with electronic records management systems. So I hope this week will help you as you start to venture on in that career path to know what to expect when you start talking to vendors. Before we go on any further, this is just something I found from PricewaterhouseCoopers, and I wanted you to take a look at what's on the screen right now. This is from an average organization, and this is only really 2 years old since I found it. So the big thing I want you to focus in on is, in a paper world, it's so easy to lose documents and files and all the different things that relate to that. I was just talking to somebody the other day at my organization that went from paper to paperless and was telling me how, advisors used to lose files for weeks on end because someone was holding them in their office or accidentally took them home or something like that. So the real point in having, among other things, with an electronic records management system, one of the real good points is to stop losing files and to have them in a place where everybody can get to them. Yeah, I'm sure you can argue that a centralized filing, storage system would probably be great. That's being used in lots of law firms and different things like that. But you really truly can't get away from having a quality electronic records management system if you're a large organization. Okay, so just keep these things in mind as you start to see some of the benefits that play out with these electronic records management systems. Okay, so there are really, as you can see, 6 things that I want you to keep in mind throughout this entire lecture. A good electronic records management system, or an ERMS, as you'll hear people call them, should accomplish these 6 things. Should allow you to capture the item into the system. We'll go through the different ways that that can happen. Get it organized in the system, whether that's through metadata or folder structures or different things like that. Allow you to be able to access the files easily. Be able to report on the contents of the system, because obviously for macro level meetings and and different annual reports and stuff like that, you'll want to be able to say how your system has grown statistically. You'll want to make sure that your system allows you to have a robust set of security, because why get a system that won't allow you to have that? And then finally, you want to make sure that, just like with the records life cycle, things need to end. So you'll want to make sure that the system allows you to destroy things at the end, okay? So these 6 items are things you'll want to keep in mind, and really make sure that any electronic records management system that you look at purchasing or maybe migrating to allows you to have these 6 elements. Okay, so think big picture at your organization. Your electronic records management system needs to somehow fit into the ecosystem of your data storage, okay? So you'll be bringing in lots of different items and turning them into electronic, okay? So you'll bring them in through a scanner, maybe it'll be from email, you'll create Microsoft Office files, maybe you'll still get faxes, some organizations still do that, or possibly you'll get what's called a born digital document. Someone will just send you a PDF file or something like that. So you're going to have all these things. You as the RIM program manager need to help folks figure out what is the best system to put these items into. Likely, if you're any size of an organization that's reasonable, you'll probably wind up having an electronic records management system, which we'll discuss in a second. But you'll also have areas such as your shared drive. Maybe you'll use Microsoft SharePoint, which is a popular management system out there for documents, or maybe other areas, external hard drives, different things like that. So you'll have these storage intermediums. Then what you're going to have is the need to be able to view something on the other side. Okay, so your electronic records management system software needs to allow you to be able to view things as a client, maybe on your desktop, or through the web, different things like that. And if the item is stored somewhere on a shared drive or maybe in SharePoint, you're going to need to be able to have folks getting access through workstations on your network at your organization. So make sure as you're starting to think about technology and electronic records, you're aware of the big picture of where all of your files are at. This is important when it comes to disaster recovery and audits and different things like that, because you won't want to have these dark spots or blind spots in your organization where you don't really know where files are at because you weren't aware of storage spaces. Okay, so make sure as you start to think about this that you know where everything is at in theory. Okay, so what I'm going to do over the next series of slides is show you an example of an electronic records management software called ImageNow. Now what I'm going to do is state again, as I have continuously throughout this course, that I do not endorse one particular product. I don't think that Macs are better than PCs. I don't think that Microsoft is better than WordPerfect. That's unfortunately still out there. That's a sidebar. And I don't think that ImageNow is better than any other software. But what I want to do is show you an example of how something is set up in an electronic records management system so you know what to work for, or what to look for when you're actually picking out a software. Okay? Because as a RIM program manager, you may be asked to evaluate different systems and give a recommendation. Okay? The bottom line is, if you back up a couple slides, there are 6 key things that should be included in any electronic records management software that you look at. Okay, ImageNow happens to have all 6. That's why I like it. But do keep in mind you're going to want to do a good evaluation of these items, and I'll show you how to do it at the end. So here's an example of the ImageNow software. Now what it allows you to do is to be able to query on metadata, which you read about in the textbook, and be able to pull up all the files that you have permission to be able to see. Okay, so this is just a snapshot of what the search grid looks like. I'm going to take you through step by step how things are imported into the system, organized, and then ultimately destroyed, completing that continuous records management cycle. So the way this particular software works, this is the test system that I'm pretty accustomed with at this point. You can have it really 2 ways on your computer. You can have it to where you have the desktop application installed, so which is the software you receive from the company. And what that does is that points to the actual document management server, which in the case of ImageNow, the organization actually owns. Okay, so you're not sending documents up into the cloud. Now, in order to log into the system, you must have a username and password. The way my organization does it is that it's tied to your Active Directory credentials. So the same login that you use to get onto the computer, you then use to get onto the system here as well too. The advantage to that, and one of the integration pieces you want to think about, is you don't want to make folks have to learn a new password for a software. Okay? So if you can get your electronic records management system to somehow tie into your Active Directory, that's an added bonus. Okay, so that's something you want to think about when you make your list of requirements that the system has to have. ImageNow also has a web version called WebNow, which is a website that can link into the database as well too. So the best part is you can be in Hawaii on vacation, not that you would want to, and pull up a file through the web. Anywhere that you have access to the web, you can do it. A lot of these softwares also have mobile apps that are compatible with phones, iPads, tablets, different things like that. So you'll want to keep that in mind. Now, there is a 5-step process that all good electronic records management systems should have integrated, okay? The first one is called capture. So you should be able to capture an item into the system in a bunch of different ways. Obviously, you should be able to bring something in via scanner, okay? So there are lots of softwares that allow you to hook up a scanner to your computer and then directly scan and get the item into the system, okay? What you don't really want to have to do is scan an item item, save it somewhere, and then import it into the system in 2 steps, okay? So you should be able to link scanners directly in. In the case of ImageNow, which I'm showing you at this point, it has something called ImageNow Printer. I'll show you that in a second. There also is the option for file import. A lot of times I work with departments who already have a really good setup on a shared space with their files organized but want to import them into the system. You don't need to print things out and scan it back in. A lot of these good programs have functions for you to be able to just grab a couple files and bring them right into the system, okay? So these are numerous ways to bring it in. In some instances, you may be able to have integrations where you could fax something into a system, where you also could have an upload from a form on the internet. There's lots of different things that you can do with some of these programs. So as you can see, when you log into the ImageNow system, there's an area called Capture, and you set up these things called profiles, and these are the different places and mediums that allow you to import into the system. It's really kind of cool, and you'll see this on a lot of your electronic records management softwares. I alluded to the thing called ImageNow Printer, which is an integration in the software I use, and I've also seen it across other things, you know, like DocuFile and LegalKey and stuff like that. This is something that you could open up an email, go to print, and instead of sending it to your actual printer in your office, you can print it into the system. So it creates a TIFF file when you print it in. It's great because it prevents people from actually having to, you know, have a document which was already digital, print it out, and then scan back in, okay? So always look for one of these print functions in softwares. They're pretty standard across the board, but it definitely needs to have that in order to be functional for an organization. Moving on, once you bring something into the system, any good records management electronic system needs to have a series of quality assurance checks, okay? This is really important because ultimately you are going to take a paper official record and you're going to bring it into a system and destroy the paper because you don't want to have 2 versions of the same record. And in order to make sure that that electronic record is going to be admissible in court, you want to make sure that you have good quality, okay? So any kind of records management system that's worth its weight should allow you to easily rescan something or maybe adjust the, you know, the picture quality in terms of the lightness, darkness, different things like that. For example, with ImageNow, you do have lots of options here because once you bring an item into the system, you have to physically, as you can see on the left, mark the page as okay, meaning you're signing off on, in the system, your username, that this document is okay. You can see you have a couple other options too. You can rescan the page, you can delete the page, you can do so many different things. But there needs to be that stopgap for you to be able to check the quality, okay? So you're not just filing away bad images. Very important. One of the next important steps is going to be putting search terms, document keys, onto your actual record. Now, in techie speak, this is what's called metadata. So it's data about data. These are tags that allow you to be able to search, okay? So obviously you'll need to take the time to think ahead about what search terms you want to put on your document, so you'll want to do that. And then a lot of these programs also allow you to do what's called linking to a host application, such as PeopleSoft or maybe some kind of financial management system. I'm going to show you what that is in just a second. Now, the way ImageNow works for me at my organization is if we need to put away a student file or a faculty file or something like that, we have our database system called PeopleSoft. At Dominican, it's called Genzabar. It's basically your student information system. Now, ImageNow, among other products, they're smart enough that if you program them, they can look at a particular screen in your information system and then learn what's on there. So in other words, if you have a screen that has the ID number of the person, maybe their name, different things like that, you can teach the application to know where those elements are and then copy them off of the host application and put them onto the actual document in the records management system. What does that do? It saves you from having to hand key these things, which can take so much time and be really tedious, okay? Not all softwares can do this, but some can. So if I were you, and as I can speak from a professional standpoint, these are all things I look at with software because I don't want to have to make the people that are in the program units work any harder than they already do, okay? So be on the lookout for that. I talked a little bit about metadata. Now this is just an example. The way things are organized within the ImageNow system, and it's very similar to other organizations' products as well too, is that you'll see there's these things on there. One is called the drawer. The way the security is set up at ImageNow is that you put documents into these repositories called drawers, and then you assign people based off their username the ability to be able to look into drawers and search. Okay, there are a couple other tags on there. These are metadata document key things, maybe the ID number of the person and the social security number, the name. That you always have to assign in ImageNow a type of document. So those are things you have to think about ahead of time. But there could be all these elements that you want to put onto a document. Ultimately, these become search terms for you. So very important that the program you work with gives you enough flexibility to put those items on there. Okay. Speaking of search, when you're ready to go, you should have the ability easily within your system that you purchase to be able to search on those items that you tagged, okay? You should be able to not only do quick searches maybe on one tag, but you should be also able to do custom sorts on many different types that are in there, maybe 3 or 4 different search terms. So the way it works in ImageNow is you've got 2 options, and you can see it at the bottom. You go to an area called Documents, and then you go in and you either search by one metadata element, in this case ID number, or you can do a search which allows you to say, show me all of the document types that equal this and the ID numbers that equal that. It lets you narrow down even more, okay? And then in the system you can build custom filters, so if you know you're going to be asking the same query or question over and over again, you can have that built into the system so you don't have to build it every time, okay? So this is really helpful for people that continuously run reports from the system. And finally, your program needs to be able to let you take things out. What you don't want to purchase is a software that's all great up to the point of destruction, okay? And what you want to do is make sure that your documents are set up based upon the retention periods in your records retention schedule. So ImageNow, among, again, other softwares, have retention policy managers built into them. The way this works at a high level is you tell the system, okay, so from, if the retention period is 7 years, you delete it from the creation of the document, then you tell the software, look at all the documents in the system, look at their creation dates, okay, and if the document type equals, I don't know, receipt or something like that, then make sure that document type equals receipt and the date is 7 years or more, and then it will flag it in the system for you to delete. It's really interesting, but you can actually take records retention schedules and translate them into systems. The bottom line here is, without going into too much more detail, if your system does not allow you to be able to set up automatic reminders to delete, it's not a good system for you to have, or it's something you really need to think about when you're purchasing, okay? Believe me, these are all out on the market, and software people are eager to get your money, so they're building these things in knowing that a lot of these different industries have these requirements. Okay? So as one of the final things we're going to talk about here, you probably will be put in a position at some point in your career to have to decide between a bunch of different vendor softwares and come up with a recommendation for strategic managers. I'm giving you what's on the screen right now is a product decision matrix that I use to be able to evaluate softwares. You'll notice that over on the left-hand side here, I have what are called user requirements. Now, there's only 5 of them on here, but you could expand this to be 50 if you wanted to. This is the column where you go in and one by one write down the things that are important to you as a RIM program manager. So it could say, for example, it has to have a print function. Maybe it has to be compatible with certain scanners, blah, blah, blah. You get them all out there. Then you grid it across the top and you say, all right, we're going to look at ImageNow, we're going to look at LegalKey, and then we're going to look at DocuFile, okay? Really, you never want, this is just a good rule of thumb, it's not really written down anywhere, but this has always held true throughout my career. You never want to make a recommendation on a software unless you have at least 3 viable vendors to choose from. That's why you've noticed that in a lot of your exercises I've made you choose 3 in order to do this. So what you do is you take all of those, get them cored out here, written out, and then you find out, okay, does it have an integrated print function? Yeah, it does, and it's actually included in the program. It does, but it's $500 more, or no, it doesn't. And then really you could do this where you have the one that you like best have the low score, or you can reverse it and have the high score. The way I do it is the one that fits my criteria best, I give the lowest score to. And then I sum it all up, and at the end, in theory, the one with the lowest score is the one that meets most of my needs, okay? That at least gives me a place to start with. I also have it on here how much it costs to implement the system, because what's going to happen, you're going to say, hey, I want to buy LegalKey. And they're going to say, from the company, all right, great, you can buy it for $200,000. So they've got that. And you also do want to see, are there any other hidden costs involved in it? Okay, so you want to get that number there. Then you're always going to be charged what's called a yearly maintenance cost from the actual organization. And that can be really sizable as well too. Maintenance fees include upgrades, patches, support, different things like that. So it's not just a one-time purchase. You're always going to have maintenance fees involved in it. So you want to get those out there. You may find that the one you like the best is the most expensive, and that may move you then to buying your second one, which isn't as expensive, but it meets most of your ideas. This is a very subjective exercise, but it at least gets all of the things out there and on paper, and I'm telling you, people in strategic buying power positions are going to want to see this. They're not just going to want to, you know, to hear you say, oh, this was my favorite one. They're going to want to know why. If you want a copy of this decision matrix, please let me know. I'll be happy to share it with you. This isn't anything proprietary, and to be honest with you, I've done this in every major project when it's come to purchasing software. So just keep that in mind. Okay, so this concludes Module 10, Technology Part 2. We have gone over all the major elements of what to do in selecting an electronic records management system. You have learned basically everything I think you need to know about technology in records management, and you've read some great articles. So this should really help bring at least a basic level of understanding of what you need to know as a RIM program manager. If you have any questions or would like to expand more upon this, as always, please just let me know. And have a great week.